All right, so now the roof is done. We're going to go ahead and get the door in, so this will be completely weatherproof. We've got the door hole ready. There's a couple ways you can do this. One is to have somebody on the inside of the room and somebody on the outside. The person on the inside tells you when you've got it centered in the hole. Our rough opening, which is called RO, you'll see that on a lot of documentation for windows and doors. Our rough opening is bigger than the door. So the door has the ability to move back and forth. We want the door about centered in that, and we have room for insulation around it. Because it's a small building and it's dark in there, we're going to do it the second way. We're going to actually put the door in. Sue and I are going to put the door in. We're going to slide it all the way one way. We're going to mark it. We're going to slide it all the way other way, and we're going to mark it. And then we're going to take the door out, prep the sill, and we'll put it in centered on those two marks. So that'll allow us the visual representation out here. So Sue's going to go ahead and set the camera up so that you can see us pick this door up and put it in the hole, do those marks. We'll take it back out, we'll prep the sill, explain what we're doing. So we'll get the camera set up here where you can see what we're doing, and we'll be right back. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to lift the door up. We're going to lean it out a little bit and set it in place. One thing I do want to point out, we're not going to do it this time because the door is coming back out so we can prep the sill. But all these doors, these exterior doors, have some way of holding the door shut during shipping and whatnot. In this case, it's a little metal bracket with Phillips screws on the inside. So if we don't remember to take that out, we're taking the door back out to get it open. So you'll see us, we'll try to mention that when we take the door back out after marking the hole, we're going to go ahead and take that screw out. So now we're going to lean the door back this way. I'm going to set it in the hole. I'm going to tip it up in place. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to run it all the way one way, like that. And we're going to find our trusty pencil. And we're going to make a mark. Then we're going to run it all the way the other way. And we're going to make a mark. Now what we know here is we have about 3/4 of an inch of space. So when we got the door exactly where we want it, it's going to be about in the center. So right about there, about 3/8. So we're going to go ahead and make a longer mark with a crow's mouth off in it. And we're going to do the same on the other side. And that's roughly where we want the door. I mean, we'll level it, of course, but that's roughly where we want the door when it goes back in. So we're going to take it out, prep the sill, remove that screw, and put it in for good. Actually, let's go your way. That way they can see what we're doing. Okay, so we've checked the bottom of this door. Some doors have a sill that has just a minimal contact areas. Some have a wide flat sill. This door has a wide flat plastic sill. So what we're going to do is we're going to run a bead of silicone across the bottom here. And then we're going to remember to remove this Phillips screw, which, thank you. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to put the door back in. And we're going to get up against our mark where we wanted it the first time, right about there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to level it on the hinge side first. And it shows me the top has to go to the right a little bit, so we're going to go ahead and put a screw right in the bottom if you'd hand me that impact. Now you could use finish nails, galvanized finish nails. I end up using Torx-headed screws. And what I do is I put a little bit of painter's caulk in the hole and then go ahead and paint right over that when I paint the door frame. I want to find the blue step ladder. Air hoses. Okay, so Sue's going to run the level. Now I'm going to run the screw gun. And we're going to go ahead and level this side over here, please. And then what I like to do is I like to step inside and check my gaps, which we'll show you a little later. Everything's looking pretty good. So we're going to go ahead and put screws up the other side and across the top. And it looks like it's going to go and rain on us. It's not supposed to rain today, I didn't think. All right, so what we're going to do in a few steps, eventually we're going to end up cutting this house wrap and sliding some flashing up under it and onto the door. And then we'll put our J-channel around for our vinyl siding. But we're going to move inside and we're going to go ahead and shim the door properly and get it so it opens and closes the way we want it to open and close. And then we'll go ahead and spray foam around the door to hold it in place and seal it. All right, so we're inside now, and we're going to go ahead and shim the door and insulate it. What I like to do is put a shim on each hinge, and I put one at the striker, which we'll show in a minute. You can buy cedar shingles, a whole bundle. You can buy a small pack of shims. We didn't think to get either one, so I just went and made a few on the table saw out of some spare cedar. So we're going to go ahead and what we're looking for on this side is a gap between the frame and the door. You'll see that black line. And we're looking to make that fairly uniform. What do I mean by that? Like, you'll notice if I shove that in there, you see how I'm changing it at the top? I don't want to make that too great. I want to keep that sort of uniform. You'll notice it's really tight at the bottom, so I'm going to have to move the bottom a little bit. So that shim right there is just about perfect. So what I'm going to do is put the rest of these in my pocket. And I'm going to find a pry bar, i.e. Phillips screwdriver, because I did not bring a pry bar out with me. And I'm going to get that started in there a little ways, about like that. And I'm going to open that. And typically speaking, you'll notice they leave screws out of the top hinge. And that's where they expect us to screw our shim in with. Is right through the hinge. And that way the hinge is hooked hard into the framing instead of just the short screws into the soft door jamb. We're going to go ahead and do that now. I'm going to look and see what that did to our angle. Our gap, I should say. I tightened it up a little too tight, so we're going to go ahead and back them off and add a little bit more shim. So then what we're going to do is we're going to find another smaller shim, like that one. I'm going to go the opposite way and just drive it right in beside that one. You could use a hammer, but your hand works. And I like that pretty well. So now I'm going to do the bottom hinge. to find a charged battery. And that was a little too much on that hinge. So I'm going to go ahead and take the screw out. We're going to try that. Yeah, I think we can work with that. So what we're going to do now is recover our shims by cutting them off with a utility knife. Just going to score it a couple times and break it off. The same thing with the second one and the bottom ones. And we're going to see if we can get that right in there, just like so. You want to be careful on your middle hinge when you shim it, that you don't hinge bind it. And what I mean by that is you don't want to try to put a curve in the square door. So we're just putting a little pressure on it. And we're going to put this screw, instead of taking the screw out of the hinge, we're actually going to pull the weather stripping back. I'm going to put this screw in behind the weather stripping where you won't see it. And it goes away. Now what we got to do is we got to do the latch. And we want to pull it, you see we want to pull it over just a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and find ourselves some shims. Kind of figure out roughly what we need. And get them in there. I'm going to start right about there. See what that does. And if we have to back it off, we will. And this one, the same thing. I like to go right through my striker plate. You'll notice this manufacturer gives us an adjustable striker plate, which is pretty cool because if you've ever put the striker plates in, you'll know that trying to get this piece in and out just the right depth, get your screws. Once you make a hole and you want to move it 1/8 of an inch, the screws always want to go back to the same hole. So having that adjustable striker is pretty nice. And having the screw go right into the framing, if somebody tries to kick the door in, that screw is going to hold a little bit more. If it was a short screw just into the door jamb, it would tear the jamb out and kick the door in. We're not really worried about security in this building, but if you were in your house, you'd want to use those nice long screws. And that gap is looking pretty good. So we're pretty happy with that. So when we are foaming windows and doors, I don't know if you can see that okay in the video, but we want to use a minimal expansion. This manufacturer calls it no warp. If we use the regular spray foam, it expands a lot and it's got a lot of pressure. You end up shoving the jamb in and pinching the door. If you're doing a window, it'll tighten the jamb up and pinch the window. So we want to make sure we use a minimal expansion. And shake it up good. We've shaken this one quite a bit to begin with. If you're doing a lot of this, you can actually buy a gun and containers that screw into that gun. And it's actually a lot cheaper than buying it by the individual use can like we did here. And you kind of want to be conscious of where you put this stuff. If you get it on you or your clothing, it tends to live with you for quite a while, as Sue will attest to. And And you also want to be conscious of how much you're putting in. So with the minimal expansion, we're going to fill this about halfway out, and it's probably still going to overflow and run out. We'll come back and clean it up later. Basically, you always want to hold your can upside down, and you're going to pull on this trigger to actuate the flow. And it's kind of variable. The harder you pull, the more you'll get. But we're just basically filling up that gap. And you sort of want to keep this stuff in where it's nice and warm. Spray foam works best when it's like 80 to 90 degrees. You get a little less expansion, a little less coverage out of a container if you've got it out in the cold. That's especially true if you're buying like the 2-part cans to do your own spray foam. You definitely want to follow the directions and keep it nice and warm. There, we're going to let that dry, and that should take care of our door. We'll have to get a doorknob the next time we go to the hardware store. We forgot to get one last time. Another piece of advice I can give you on spray foam is if you're using a lot of it and you use more than one can continuously, use the same straw across your cans and keep these straws. Because now this can is still half full. And if I set that in the shop, this is all going to dry up and I'm not going to get any foam out of it. But if I cut this back, I probably can get it to work. So if you keep these straws, let's say I had to use 4 cans because I had a lot of windows and doors, and use only 1 straw for all 4 cans, I'll have 3 spares. So the can itself doesn't go bad. It tends to dry up in the first third of the tip here. So this is just something to be aware of. The stuff in the can keeps for a while. And as I mentioned, you'll notice on the back of the can, read the directions, but one of the things it does say on here is to keep the can between 60 and 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Let's see if I can get out of the light. 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So, like I was mentioning, keep the can warm, follow the directions, etc., etc. The biggest thing, though, is remember, minimal expansion when you're doing windows and doors. I don't know how many times I've had to go into a house and take a saw and cut out the spray foam on the side of the window so you can actually open and close the window.
And don't get it on your hands because it takes like a week and a half to come off and you'll have creepy zombie hands and they feel really crunchy and gross.
And don't wipe them in the dirt so it's not sticky, because then the dirt sticks in the spray foam and it stays on your hands as well. So yeah, words to live by. Thanks for watching, guys. Any questions on putting a door in? I know this is just a shed and we really didn't take all the pains we would in a house, but any questions, leave them below. We'll try to answer it. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and come on back. It's going to get exciting. We're going to get some insulation done in here, some V-match cedar on a couple walls, some sheetrock on a couple walls. We're going to start hanging solar equipment in here.